A millionaire real estate developer claws her way into Washington politics.
The lust for power brings out all kinds of bad things from people, and that lust for power will cause people to do things they wouldn't ordinarily do.
But in her increasing obsession with political office, she hatches a devious plan.
Something in her brain told her that anybody who got in her way had to be removed. I think it's that simple.
My strategy is the same as it's always been, Brad. Just keep working very hard. That's what I've done all my life.
This was all about public office. I know it sounds crazy, and it was crazy.
A petite millionaire's oversized ambition leads to foul play. But who was she out to get? Find out tonight on Power, Privilege, and Justice.
On June 9, 1997, Ruthann Aron, a former U.S. Senate candidate and millionaire real estate developer, arrived at a Marriott hotel in the Washington, D.C. suburb of Gaithersburg, Maryland. Walking briskly into the lobby, she mysteriously left $500 at the hotel's front desk and disappeared out the door. The 5'1", 54-year-old Ruthann then drove to a nearby country club, joining her powerful political colleagues at a charity golf tournament.
I was actually playing golf with Ruthann Aron. She was very intense, she was very focused, she was very absorbed with herself. But that describes almost everybody in politics.
After receiving a page, Ruthann quietly slipped off the golf course. As she walked toward her SUV, Ruthann was surrounded by police, handcuffed and arrested. The charge against her, solicitation to commit murder. She had attempted to hire a hitman.
I went home and there was a phone message from one of the local TV channels. What do you think about Ruthann Aron? And I figured that they were asking about what are her chances for the county council race. And I said, I guess she has a pretty good chance to win. And they said, no, we're talking about her being arrested today for a contract murder. I was absolutely, totally floored. I thought it was a crank call.
In Ruthann's car, police found a red wig, a large stack of $100 bills, a stolen Virginia license plate, books on hiring a hitman, and parts for a homemade silencer. "Maybe I just lost it," Ruthann said to the detectives. By nightfall, Ruthann Aron, the wealthy, successful politician known throughout her community as a tough-talking power player, was behind bars.
Ruthann Aron's arrest was big news in Washington, D.C. It was splashed across the front page of the Washington Post, and everybody inside the Beltway was talking about it. But who was Ruthann Aron trying to kill? And why?
Born in 1942, Ruthann grew up in the foothills of New York's Catskill Mountains. Starting at a young age, she worked at the diner her parents owned in the town of South Fallsburg.
It was difficult. You know, she was a very blue-collar kid. You know, Ruthann saw what the blue-collar side of life was, and I don't think she wanted to stay there.
Ruthann became known as an intelligent loner and was accepted to prestigious Cornell University. In 1965, Ruthann married Barry Aron, a promising young medical student. The couple struggled financially in New York City while Barry finished medical school.
Ruthann worked while Barry went to medical school. You know, she put in the long hours to raise their family. She was his helpmate.
The couple soon had 2 children, but Barry's emerging medical practice allowed the family to move to the comfortable suburbs of Montgomery County, Maryland.
Montgomery County is basically the north and western border of the nation's capital. Many of the people that live in Montgomery County work in the halls of power of the United States.
Ruthann dove energetically into her role as a suburban Maryland housewife, but life for Ruthann and Barry was more troubled than it appeared.
The Arons had a tough time of it. In the early 70s, Barry had an affair, and the couple split up for a while.
Barry moved out. he was having a relationship with another woman, a nurse from a hospital where he practiced. But after he and Ruthann reconciled, he moved back home. Her husband's infidelity motivated Ruthann to focus on her own ambitions. She enrolled in law school, concentrating on real estate.
She was such a bright and energetic person. We watched as she went to law school and trying to deal with children at home. It was a lot for somebody to take on.
Armed with her law degree, Ruthann entered the lucrative world of suburban Washington, D.C. real estate, which was booming in the 1980s. Ruthann negotiated 7 enormous commercial real estate deals in under 10 years, netting millions of dollars in fees. But it was also in this newfound career that Ruthann began exhibiting strangely aggressive behavior, which on more than one occasion landed her in court.
I had tried a case against her on behalf of some clients, former business partners, who had claimed that she had defrauded them. I thought what she had done to my clients was despicable. It was just an out fraud, which she denied. Ruthann Aron was not a virtuous figure.
Despite her legal troubles, Ruthann climbed her way up Washington, D.C.'s steep social and professional ladders. With both her and Barry's careers on the fast track, the Arons joined the elite, moving to a supersized mansion in the exclusive community of Potomac, Maryland.
Just the name Potomac raises images of really the promised land. I mean, everybody in the Washington, D.C. area wants to live in Potomac before they die. It has the fanciest houses, the richest people, the best schools.
You know, if you want a big house with some property around it and horses, that's where you go. I always say Potomac is where excitement goes to die. It's a very perfect, prim, proper place.
If the Arons lived anywhere else in America, they'd be considered wildly successful. Barry's medical practice was booming, and they had a big house in a fancy neighborhood. But around Washington, status is judged not by money, but by political influence and power. Ruthann knew this and quickly set her sights on elected office.
Politics is not a game here. The politicians are driven. It's serious business. It's blood sport.
Ruthann successfully lobbied for a seat on Montgomery County's prestigious 5-member planning board, a group with enormous influence over millions of dollars in real estate.
One of the big issues in the Washington suburbs is development. So being on the planning board is very powerful and influential.
That was a really important point in her life. She got her first taste of being a public official, and I think she became addicted.
As Ruthann spread her influence around the county, she proudly revealed an unusual hobby. She loved guns. Ruthann was often seen at local shooting ranges firing her pistols.
She liked the power. She wielded the power ruthlessly at the planning board. I can remember a case where she screamed at a little white-haired lady who was fumbling over her testimony. And those of us in the room kind of looked around and said, you know, lay off, she's old.
That the minute she got on the planning board, she was already seeking higher office. The county council, the state legislature, she and I talked about that. We had many lunches talking about her career, and she wanted to go that next step.
But few of her colleagues expected what happened next. Ruthann Aron's name came to the attention of a group of power brokers at the Republican National Committee, who were searching for a strong female candidate to run for the U.S. Senate from Maryland. Overjoyed at the opportunity, Ruthann jumped at the chance.
I was stunned when I found that she was going to go for senator from the state of Maryland. Absolutely stunned. Usually you have worked your way up to that. Being on the planning board would be one step towards that direction, but it's very unusual for somebody to run from planning board to the whole state.
Support me. I hate to cut to the finance side, but if you have your checkbooks, this doesn't happen without paying for the media.
Aggressively fundraising, Ruthann hired the best political consultants money could buy. But just as her unlikely candidacy began to gather steam, Ruthann received shocking news. Her 77-year-old father, David Greenswag, was found murdered inside his home. Ruthann's campaign for U.S. Senate came to a screeching halt.
It was apparently a handyman and a drifter who accosted her father and beat him, and he died.
We found that the motive of killing Dave was just robbery. It was a very brutal murder just for a few $100s.
At a press conference on August 26th, Ruthann's husband, Dr. Barry Aron, now a prominent Washington area urologist, announced that Ruthann was in seclusion because of grief about her loss. Ruthann traveled to her hometown of South Fallsburg, New York, to attend her father's funeral. But curiously, she showed little interest in the investigation of her father's murder.
From the onset of the investigation to the arrest of the two people that did the murder to the trial, Ruthann never contacted anybody from the Fallsburg Police Department, which we felt was quite strange and odd.
Ruthann played the dutiful daughter at her father's funeral, politely shaking hands and accepting condolences. But in fact, Ruthann and her father hated each other. His will read, "I specifically and unequivocally leave absolutely nothing for my daughter, Ruthann Aron of Potomac, Maryland, who has been cruel to me."
Just days after the funeral, Ruthann returned to Maryland and threw herself back into her campaign for U.S. Senate.
You wouldn't have known that she was the grieving daughter at all. She was right back in focus. It was like, grieving daughter, back to candidate.
Ruthann had been challenged in the race by former Tennessee Senator William Brock III.
I come today to announce my candidacy for the United States Senate in Maryland.
Brock was better connected and had even more money than Ruthann. He quickly overtook her in the polls. Desperate to regain her front-runner status, Ruthann began to use her father's murder as a political tool.
Last Wednesday, my father, David Greenswag, was brutally murdered in the midst of a robbery. I grew up in an America that was safe. What has happened to all of us?
With Brock's poll numbers skyrocketing, Ruthann's campaign started to run negative attack ads.
The Baltimore Sun says Paul Sarbanes would rather run against Bill Brock than me. I don't blame him. Brock worked for 5 foreign governments, and Brock tried to run for governor of Tennessee this year. Tennessee? That's politics. I'm not a career politician. I'm a businesswoman.
Brock struck back at a press conference, accusing Ruthann of being convicted for fraud in the 1980s.
The Baltimore Sun reported while she was making millions as a real estate speculator, she had trouble obeying the law. More than once, the court ruled her out of bounds. She admitted to the Sun she paid more than $300,000 because of her wrongdoing. We can do better. Bill Brock for U.S. Senate.
It was pretty normal for that kind of statewide race. It gets pretty hot and heavy, and you have to have a thick skin to be in politics.
Ruthann valiantly fought Brock to the bitter end.
My strategy is the same as it's always been, Brad, to be with the people of Maryland. Just keep working very hard. That's what I've done all my life.
But on Election Day, in the fall of 1994, the results came in. Brock had won. Ruthann was absolutely devastated by the loss.
In that campaign, Ruthann simply proved that she was way over her head. And I told her that. I said, "You have no chance. Why are you doing this?"
She was really shocked at how the game is played and how charges are thrown around and how half-truths get out there. Barry Aron called her exquisitely sensitive. Well, anyone who's exquisitely sensitive should not be running at that level.
In the Gentlemen's Club of Washington politics, the losing candidate in a primary is supposed to gracefully concede to their fellow party member and pledge their support. But not Ruthann. She not only didn't endorse Brock, she sued him.
The one thing in American politics people are fairly good at is losing elections. She couldn't let go. She just couldn't accept losing.
Ruthann sued Brock for libel, claiming that he had ruined her reputation by statements that she had been convicted for fraud.
Technicality, she was actually sued civilly by her former partners and lost. She wasn't convicted, so on that one word, she filed suit. To think that she was going to beat Bill Brock because he slipped with one word was, again, naive.
At her libel trial, Ruthann's old nemesis, lawyer Arthur Kahn, testified about his legal battles with Ruthann in the 1980s. He told how Ruthann had allegedly defrauded his clients, two of her former real estate partners, for $300,000.
I was sitting on the witness stand. I remember looking at her, and she gave me a look that could kill, like just darts coming out of her eyes toward me. She apparently hated me. I did not hate her. I disliked her. I didn't have any respect for her.
Arthur Kahn took particular delight in taking her down, and she remembered that.
Arthur Kahn's testimony helped cause Ruthann to lose her lawsuit. With her career in turmoil, things began to go awry in Ruthann's personal life as well. Her already volatile marriage to her husband Barry was crumbling.
You would see them at fundraisers in Montgomery County, and they looked like the happy, successful couple who had it all together, who had this home in Potomac, but, you scratch the surface, and there's just weird things going on there.
Ruthann and Barry's relationship took a turn for the worse on Halloween, 1995.
The couple is having an argument in the dining room about finances, and Ruthann grabs his wallet and begins ripping up $20 bills, and he pushes her and she falls down and gets up and goes in her bedroom. And when Barry follows her in, she's sitting on the edge of the bed pointing a gun at him saying, "If you take another step, I'll kill you." That's kind of mind-blowing.
Ruthann attempted to save the relationship, but Barry wanted a divorce. With her marriage once again in crisis, Ruthann did what she always did. She threw herself back into her work. She launched a political comeback, announcing her candidacy for a seat on the elite Montgomery County Council. But Ruthann's political ambition was verging on obsession.
She put everything that she believed in, her entire identity began to depend on holding public office. Something in her brain told her that anybody who got in her way between her and public office had to be removed. I think it's that simple. I really do.
It was around this time that Ruthann began to secretly visit the website of Paladin Press, a soldier of fortune publisher in Colorado. She was particularly interested in the company's most notorious title, Hitman, a manual for independent contractors. Something was going on in the mind of Ruthann Aron. Her obsessive desires were about to transform her from a well-meaning public servant into a notorious criminal figure.
In the midst of her comeback political campaign for a seat on the prestigious Montgomery County Council, Ruthann visited a Home Depot, purchasing 2 lawnmower mufflers, common elements used in building a homemade silencer.
She bought a book from Paladin Press on how to make a silencer, what every housewife would pick up.
At the same time, Ruthann's crumbling marriage to Barry Aron was going from bad to worse. Convinced that he was seeing other women, Ruthann had not allowed him to sleep in the bedroom of their Potomac mansion for years.
We knew he was passive-aggressive by the different things that he did. He took out a pad with the name of a pharmacy on top.
Barry's note to Ruthann said, "I'm going to have an affair if I want to, and if you don't like it, you can shoot yourself in the head."
Between her husband's mind games and Ruthann's over-the-top ambition, this was a situation headed for trouble.
On a warm June morning in 1997, a local businessman named Billy Mossberg was having breakfast at a hotel in Rockville, Maryland. On his way out the door, he bumped into a casual acquaintance, Ruthann Aron.
She says, if I need to talk to you, can I call you over the weekend? I said, sure.
The owner of a large waste transfer station in the outer suburbs, Billy was one of the most controversial characters in the area.
He was a quite notorious figure in Montgomery County. He was very outspoken, an iconoclast, a rebel of sorts, and he'd been in a fuss with the county over his property.
Having experienced his share of conflict with the county government, Billy was wary of anyone in power. But when Ruthann Aron called, he reluctantly agreed to meet her.
I said, well, up the street's a place called J.J. Muldoon's. We can go up there. Thought in the back of my mind was, the NASCAR race is on, and I'm a NASCAR fan.
Sitting across the booth from Ruthann Aron, Billy kept his eyes glued to the TV, only half listening to Ruthann, until he heard an astonishing request.
She started talking about she believed in an eye for an eye. She said she wanted to have some people eliminated. She was hell-bent for that. And it struck me, this woman is serious as a New York second. She wants some people killed.
Ruthann wanted somebody murdered and asked Billy to help her. She never mentioned the name of her intended victim. Billy was frightened by Ruthann's request.
What in the world is she asking me for? I have no idea. What kind of deal is this? I'd had a few problems with Montgomery County, and I got to thinking, this woman was a politician, so I'm getting set up here.
In a near panic, Billy rushed home to figure out what to do. Reluctant to call any of the Montgomery County authorities, he phoned the FBI. But doubting his story, agents brushed him off. Billy decided that he had to take a chance and contact someone trustworthy in local government.
Well, I remember getting a call. I was going to my daughter's recital. Billy Mossberg called me on my cell phone, and he said he needed to talk to me. And I said, fine, I think tomorrow afternoon. He said, no, I mean now.
At Dean's suggestion, Billy met him at a public place, the Woodside Deli in Silver Spring, Maryland. Sitting down at the table, Billy informed the prosecutor that Ruthann Aron had asked him to arrange a murder.
He was very forthright and direct. He asked me if I knew Ruthann Aron, and I said I did, thinking back to just a few weeks ago having had breakfast with her. And of course, everyone knew she was jockeying for a position as a candidate on the county council. He told me, well, I've had some very strange conversations with her.
He said, well, who do you trust? I said, I don't trust none of you. I don't trust the government. I don't trust the law. I don't think he believed a word I said.
And it was going through my mind that perhaps he misunderstood her, and I was truly thinking that, well, I'm sure there's a misunderstanding.
Despite his doubts, Dean brought Billy Mossberg to police headquarters in Rockville.
The most important thing is anyone at risk right now. And that's what we had to find out right now. Is anyone at risk?
Billy was questioned by skeptical detectives, suspicious that he couldn't name Ruthann's potential victim.
It wasn't an interview. It was a, 2 or 3 hour interrogation.
Billy Mossberg was so afraid that he was going to end up in jail for framing Ruthann that during a break, when he went to a nearby Wendy's, he ordered 2 extra cheeseburgers, thinking it was going to be his last meal as a free man.
We need to establish, okay, if this in fact is the case, then we needed to put together a criminal prosecution against Ruthann Aron. I mean, we weren't going to cover it up.
The sergeant, he asked me, he says, are you willing to help us? And I says, what do you think I'm here for?
They got Billy into his car, wired up his cell phone, and asked him to place a call to Ruthann Aron. He did, and they listened, and they were suddenly converted.
Ruthann?
Billy!
How you doing?
I'm okay. That was fun talking last Sunday. Very few people left in life who you could really talk to.
On the other matter that we was talking about?
Yes. Yeah, you want to get together again this weekend?
Ruthann told Billy that she wished to meet again, to continue making arrangements for the hit.
Here's what I need to do. I need to sit with you.
Okay.
Ask you some questions, and I got to make sure that you and I are, going to be okay.
Okay.
Safe, I mean.
Yeah.
She, in that first conversation, essentially corroborated Billy Mossberg by recalling the conversation that they had, the meeting that they'd had, and what it is that she wanted done.
The police had Billy Mossberg set up another meeting. There must have been some concern when Ruthann insisted that they meet at the local shooting range.
The police had a surveillance van at the range and had a recording device on Billy that they hoped she would not discover.
I bought this gun. was at a gun show and I bought this Beretta. And I decided, well, I bought it, now I'm going to have to go learn what to do with it.
She was getting fitted for a new shotgun. You know, I'm thinking, this is really, really bizarre. And then the thought comes to mind, this is really Montgomery County politics at its finest.
Billy gave Ruthann the phone number of the supposed hitman.
I made my contact.
Right.
And, I told him I had a lady that needed a job done.
How do you know he's reliable, Philip?
I really can't take it. Just let it be at that.
But you trust this person.
Look, all I know is, from what I heard, the guy can be trusted.
What did you charge?
Depends on what you want.
But the phone number would connect Ruthann not to a real hitman, but to Detective Terry Ryan, a Montgomery County policeman. The next morning, Ruthann drove all the way across the county to an anonymous payphone at a Sears in a fading strip mall. There, she called Detective Ryan, believing he was an actual hitman.
You don't know me.
Right.
I don't know you.
That's better that way.
It's good.
If we want to read about somebody in the obit, is that too blunt?
That's not blunt at all. How we get them there, what we need to talk about.
Yeah.
I'm not playing games. Understand me? I'm just trying to...
I hope you don't think I am.
Ryan agreed to carry out a murder on Ruthann's behalf for $10,000 cash. Payment, they agreed, would be made when the victim's obituary was published in the newspaper. The detective then asked for the identity of Ruthann's desired victim. Ruthann revealed to him the name of the person she wanted murdered.
Okay, last name K-A-H-N.
First name?
Arthur.
The hit was to be placed on Arthur Kahn, the lawyer who had bitterly testified against Ruthann in her libel suit against her old political rival, William Brock. Detective Ryan and his team needed to move fast. They had to gather enough hard evidence to arrest Ruthann before she could hire another hitman to kill Kahn, or even attempt to do the job herself. Meanwhile, Ruthann was getting nervous about her plan. She obsessively paged Billy Mossberg for reassurance.
Hey, Billy.
Yeah.
You wouldn't set me up, would you?
Why would I want to set you up? No, it's...
You think this guy's for real? He's not some kind of an undercover setup?
The contact that hooked me up with him, he owes me his life.
I see.
Okay? You know, he said, this guy's okay.
They're legendary. I mean, there are 15 tapes, each one a gem. You just listen to them and you cannot believe what you're listening to.
Would you do me a favor, sweetheart?
Yeah.
You know I love you, right? Let's have a code name. Why don't we call me Sam?
Okay, Sam.
You got her, a millionaire woman, an upstanding member of the community, first spell the name of Arthur Kahn. Then it gets even weirder.
The very next day, Ruthann went to a payphone at a strip mall near her Potomac home. Paging Detective Ryan, she surprised him with a truly shocking request.
She said she had a second person, that she wanted two.
Ruthann ordered another murder and agreed to pay an additional $10,000 cash.
There are two jobs. I sort of made up my mind, as I told you yesterday, if I couldn't get it done, I'd do it myself. Now, the second one gets at least Phoenix. Works in the office building next to Shady Grove, and next to the hospital.
The last name?
A like apple, R Ruthann. First name B like boy, A-R-R-Y.
She gave him her husband's description. She gave him her husband's license plate number for his car.
Ruthann never mentioned that Barry Aron was her husband. Ryan asked Ruthann who he should kill first, Arthur Kahn or Barry Aron.
Which one first?
Second one first.
That night, Barry received a call from the supermarket. Ruthann felt like eating lobster. Would Barry like to share in this special meal? He declined, but the couple still had dinner together that night. Ruthann enjoyed her lobster. Barry had a turkey burger, unaware that his wife had just ordered his murder.
Worried that Ruthann might soon carry out the murders herself, the police urgently moved to bring her plans to a halt.
That day was weird. Terry Ryan, the police officer, told her to take $500, put it in a padded envelope, write the name of a bogus company on the front, and drop it off at the front desk of the Marriott in Gaithersburg.
Little did Ruthann know that as she prepared to make a down payment on 2 contract murders, her every move was being watched. The area around the hotel was swarming with police officers and detectives.
I guess she has a flair for the dramatic, because she went and got herself a big floppy hat, sunglasses, and a long trench coat.
She went to the farthest corner of the parking lot away from the lobby and put on a disguise. She just strode right in, dropped off the down payment, and was out of there. And before she got very far down the road, she'd taken off the disguise and was dressed for her golf outing that day.
After leaving the down payment for the murders, Ruthann headed for the golf course.
She went golfing with friends of hers on the planning board and chatted them up and went about like, nothing was going on in her life.
We were all milling around before the game, and she was shaking hands like a politician. She was personable. She didn't seem unusual, and she left early.
Detective Ryan paged Ruthann one last time.
She received a page from the officer to make sure that this is really and truly what she wanted to have done. He basically said, I got the down payment, and now, unless you tell me different, this is done. And she said, in a very calm voice, she said this is what she wanted.
We're okay then?
Yeah.
2 weeks from when this happens, I'll talk to you about the next one.
Right.
I'm going to maybe get out here and do something.
Okay.
We felt we had irrefutable evidence that this was a very calmly and coldly calculated solicitation to commit murder.
As Ruthann approached her car, police moved in and placed her under arrest. With Ruthann in custody, detectives immediately went to work gathering evidence.
When she was arrested, no one could believe it was her. There had to be something wrong. The police had to be wrong.
But Ruthann's SUV was littered with proof of her murderous intentions. The investigators even wondered if she was planning to carry out the murders herself.
I think it is the case that she had thought about doing it herself. Just how far down the road towards doing it herself she had gone, we didn't know until the search of her home.
Police quickly entered the Aron's Potomac mansion. In Ruthann's closet, they discovered a large military assault rifle. Nearby, they came across a piece of paper with 3 names written on it: Barry Aron, Arthur Kahn, and John Harrison, another lawyer who had testified against Ruthann in the past.
She just felt that he was also in the way and needed to be out of the way.
Police believed this to be Ruthann's hit list. Most curious of all, detectives found a prescription vial filled with a strange white powder. They sent the vial to the police lab for tests. Trying to piece together the puzzle, detectives asked a stunned Barry Aron if he remembered anything odd taking place recently in his home.
Dr. Aron told us this remarkable tale. One night, she offered to make him his favorite chili dish. He noticed that she was pouring some kind of white stuff onto the chili, which he assumed was a spice. She didn't eat any of it. He had a bowl or 2 of it. He said he then sat down in a recliner and fell asleep until about 9:30 the next morning. And he said he woke up feeling as though he'd been hit by a truck.
The results from the lab confirmed the detective's suspicions. The vial contained a potentially lethal mix of prescription drugs. Prosecutors added attempted murder to the charges against Ruthann.
Reports of Ruthann's allegedly deadly chili spread like wildfire among the local press corps. A Washington Post headline dubbed it Ruthann's 5-alarm chili.
Within days, Ruthann had assembled the best lawyers money could buy.
I am not going to stop. It is my belief as her lawyer that this woman is ill and that she really does need to be in a hospital.
Ruthann's lead attorney, Barry Helfand, faced with overwhelming evidence against his client, immediately presented Ruthann as mentally unstable.
She had money, so we expected it to be a well-funded defense. We weren't quite sure what direction this was going to take, but it emerged that it was going to take the insanity defense.
This is a charade. Somebody who's out on the golf course playing golf one day, functionally perfectly okay, and now all this happens and she's got her head in her hands.
She's not insane. She's not a nice person and she's not insane. If she was not a rich lawyer, this wouldn't be happening.
I think that something snapped in her mind. She lost all reasoning. Now, the question becomes, what's the legal standard of insanity? Was it met? I mean, she wasn't slobbering. She wasn't crawling around on the ground. But to me, she clearly lost it. And I mean lost it big time.
The biggest trial in Montgomery County history was about to begin, and all of Washington was wondering the same thing. Could Ruthann Aron convince a jury that she was truly insane?
Ruthann Aron prepared to stand trial on 2 counts of solicitation to commit murder. As the proceedings got underway, her defense team presented a succession of high-priced psychiatric experts who testified to her mental instability. The defense stated that she suffered from psychological trauma caused by abuse from her father when she was a child.
The whole trial ended up being sort of the battle of the doctors. The prosecution had 4 doctors. Ruthann Aron hired 8 doctors, and each doctor came up with a different reason why Ruthann Aron would have done something like this.
One doctor who testified for the defense claimed that Ruthann had a second personality named Alex Anders because she had ordered her Soldier of Fortune books under that name.
Nobody would argue that Ruthann Aron did not have some issues, but mental illness does not equal not criminally responsible. It is not automatically a defense.
After 6 weeks of testimony, the case ended abruptly in a mistrial because a single juror who refused to convict hung the jury. But Ruthann's legal troubles were far from over. Prosecutors quickly brought the case back to court for a second trial.
Just before the case was going to the jury, she changed her plea and decided that she wasn't going to fight this anymore.
Throwing herself on the mercy of the court, Ruthann changed her insanity plea to a plea of no contest, essentially admitting her guilt.
I think she thought it was time to run up the white flag and try to salvage something here.
On November 24th, 1998, Ruthann was sentenced to 3 years in the county jail after time served. Although the attempted murder charges stemming from the infamous chili Ruthann allegedly served her husband Barry had by now been dropped, Ruthann's battles continued, even from behind bars.
Even after she went to jail, Ruthann wouldn't give up her beloved seat on the Montgomery County Planning Board without a fight. Refusing to resign, she forced the board to hold a public hearing and formally vote to remove her.
In the midst of their still ongoing divorce, Ruthann's husband, Barry, filed an additional $7.5 million civil lawsuit against Ruthann for emotional distress. Ruthann countersued for $24 million, claiming Barry overprescribed addictive medications for her, like Xanax, Valium, and Halcyon. The estranged couple finally ended their feud in 2001 with an undisclosed financial settlement.
To me, the moral is personal balance. You can become so obsessed in seeking your goal, trying to make something out of yourself, that you lose all perspective. And I think that's the story here. Ruthann Aron began as somebody who was a lot like other politicians, and then she became somehow obsessed, and at some point she became damaged, and she paid the price.
You always hear the saying, power corrupts. It really wasn't worth it for Ruthann to lose her essence of herself in that pursuit of the power. That was not the person at the end, was not the person that I knew.
By late 2001, Ruthann was released from prison and living under a new name in another state. But for some, a free Ruthann, even hundreds of miles away, was reason to be very nervous.
A lot of people in this county, I got to tell you, were worried that Ruthann, when she got out, would still be in some kind of a mood of retribution or revenge. If they said something bad about Ruthann, maybe they'd be next.
Yes, she's capable of anything. From where I've ended up knowing her and seeing her, she's capable of anything. The thoughts on my mind every day that this woman's gonna show up, and I probably got a t-shirt with a bullseye on it.
When I think of Ruthann Aron, I think of her as the type of person who on her deathbed would make plans to even the score. About a year ago, there was a car in my garage sitting there, you know, out of place. You start to imagine things. Maybe she's here for me.
Who could ever have imagined that a 5'1" wealthy Potomac matron would instill such fear in a community? In the Washington, D.C. area, the name Ruthann Aron will forever remain notorious. For Court TV, I'm Dominic Dunn.